pursuits. I'm stressing Michelle out a lot by not sitting down and starting. But you guys don't mind, do you? So welcome back. It's our last episode of the year. And we have Ken.
Great to be here.
So great to have you.
Oh, look at that beautiful face.
Isn't that? So this AI thing is the real deal. That is totally an AI image. So if you're surprised seeing me, like Ken looks a little fluffier on camera than he does in his nice cover shots.
No,
well,
we were just actually talking about how you look better in person.
Fantastic.
Thanks for coming. Ken actually has some really cool stuff to share with us today, right? You wanted to tell everyone to buy and sell a home today?
I think there's lots of opportunities out there.
That was what we teased this when we promoted the webinar, that you were going to join us to talk about shadow inventory, which I don't know if anyone knows what that means.
I didn't.
Well, the way that this, do you want me to jump into it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So the way that this came about, hi, I'm Ken Lund. I'm at Ferrari Lund Real Estate, and so excited to be on this podcast. Big fan. But I was talking with Sandy the other day when she invited me to be on this, and I had been doing some research because a family member had reached out to me, and they were really stressed out about this social media video they had seen about all the shadow inventory in the country that was going to flood the market and prices were going to collapse and it was going to be 2008 all over again. And so I know a little, and I've seen videos like that say, oh, 2008 is coming again. 2008 is coming again. And, you know, I can't speak for the whole country, but for the Reno-Sparks area, digging into the numbers a little bit, and it made me feel a lot more comforted. I feel like we have a balanced market right now. And I think a balanced market is a healthy market. There's opportunities for buyers. There's opportunities for sellers. And it's a great time for real estate professionals to really flex their negotiation skills because there's negotiation opportunities on either side.
Yeah, it's a really good time for the really good experienced realtors to shine because they're playing a bigger role in each transaction in a market like this one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us, I loved 2021 on the listing side where my job as a listing agent was basically to sit on the telephone and tell the buyer's agents, well, your offer didn't please the seller enough. What more can you do to please the seller?
Can you offer your firstborn?
Yeah, and of course on the buyer's agent side, you know, it was a really frustrating time. You felt like if you didn't show the home 3 hours after it was listed, that, you know, there'd be lost opportunities or 11 offers on the table.
You know, that's the side that we live on.
Permanently.
We don't get to do the other side.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, there's headwinds that we're dealing with. I mean, interest rates continue to be a challenge. Low inventory continues to be a challenge. And that's what I want to jump into. So is this slide on the screen?
Yes. So
Let's jump to this first one. Perfect.
yourself at home on the laptop.
So shadow inventory. So shadow inventory, as I understand it, as has been defined, are homes that people want to sell, but they're not on a multiple listing service. They're not on the market. So the typical sources of that hidden inventory or shadow inventory, whatever you want to call it, are withdrawn inspired listings where the people tried to sell the house.
Oh, you're not talking about for sale by owners.
Well, I mean, you know, they're kind of on the market in different ways. So they're trying to publicly market the property.
Right.
So, but in Reno, part of my morning routine is going on, Zillow and those other places and looking and seeing what for sale by owners are on the market. And there's just not very many of them right now. It's a negligible part of the market. They're out there, but
Has it ever been a big part of the market?
In the time that I've sold real estate, there's times that there's more than others. Mm-hmm. It's never been significant, but I think right now it's as low as it's been in the 10 years that I've been selling real estate.
That's interesting.
I think this is a number plucked from air, but it was somewhere between 15 and 20 homes.
Okay.
That are for sale by owners.
I'm going to go on a tangent now and I apologize. Yeah. It's not like there was this sharp uptick in for sale by owners following the NAR lawsuit.
There hasn't been.
Interesting to know.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, I think those numbers have stayed pretty steady. I know it's so funny that, 6 months ago, we were all talking about how there's going to be this seismic shift in the real estate industry.
Yep.
I think everybody settled in pretty well, and I don't think it's been very disruptive.
It's pretty much been business as usual from our side.
Yeah.
But so my question was, just to make sure it's clear, for sale by owners are not shadow inventory because they're actually on the market.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about their marketing methods, but they are trying to publicly market their property. So when we talk about withdrawn and expired listings, those are listings where people put it on the MLS. We're trying to market it, and for whatever reason, the listing agreement with the agent expired, or they made a decision to withdraw the listing from the market. And so if you look at this graph that's on the screen right now, back in, what's the first year I had? 2006. I think I went back as far as 2004. And in 2004, there were 1,761 listings that did not result in a sale. They were either withdrawn or expired.
Okay.
Now, it's important to remember, a lot of those listings do end up selling. In fact, I'd say the majority of those listings will end up selling. Either they'll be relisted with the same agent, or they'll be relisted with a different agent. Sometimes it'll be a week later. Sometimes it'll be 6 months later. And if you were to go through, and I didn't run the numbers on this, but just anecdotally, just from seeing them, a lot of those withdrawn listings, they'll come back on the market later and then they'll sell. I had a couple this year where we took them off for seasonal reasons or because the sellers had some things going on in their life. And we said, no problem, let's take it off for a few months. We put it back on and then we sold it the second time around. And that's healthy. Another thing that can result in withdrawn listings is if an agent changes brokerage. I remember, so about 100 of those, if you look at the 2020 numbers, about 100 of those withdrawals are when a certain agent with the last name of Wood changed brokerages, and when we switched from gold to professionals, then you had 100 withdrawals. I remember running the stats that month. I'm like, holy cow, what's going on here? and but then he immediately put it on with the new brokerage and sold it with that.
He's a market mover.
Yeah, when you have that many listings, it makes people notice. So there's a shout out to Mike Wood there. You're welcome.
He's been on the podcast,
I know. So if you look at these numbers, there's just not that many withdrawn expireds on the market. Look, as we're sitting here right now, to date in 2024, there's been 762 in total. And look at, in 2004, there was 1,700. In 2005, 3,800. In 2006, 8,400.
Wow.
I mean, it's a negligible part of the market.
Okay.
And I'll tell you just anecdotally, a lot of those withdrawns and expireds were immediately put back on the market or shortly thereafter, and a lot of them sold. Mm-hmm. So there's not this big glut of properties out there where people, they want to sell their property. I mean, they put it on the market for a reason, and they're just, waiting to put it on the market. There's not that many of them relative to the number of listings that we have. So that's one shadow inventory thing. The next one, if we push the slide over, people talk about, and I don't hear this as much, when I first started in real estate in 2015, I was still getting calls, and you probably were as well, with buyers that say, you know what, we're really all about short sales and bank owns. And, those are the kind of opportunities we wanted. We want
to get a deal.
And even then saying, well, they're not as common as they used to be. And now they're almost negligible. So if you have somebody that says, well, there's just a big glut of foreclosures or, distressed properties that are going to come on the market, it just ain't so right now. That's not to say, household debt is something that gives me pause. I'm worried about that. I know that there are people out there that are really reaching the limits of their home equity, lines of credit.
When Lee came on, Lee Stevens was telling us that his team has gone to listing appointments, and they're saying when they meet with a seller, they did a home equity line of credit to consolidate debt, and now they've tapped into so much of their equity that there isn't enough left to pay a realtor a commission and have proceeds for a down payment on a new place. So the household debt is trapping them from selling a house, which would that count as shadow inventory? Because it's somebody who wanted to sell their house, but they can't because they're stuck. There's not enough equity.
Well, let's jump into that right now. I was going to kind of have that be my conclusion, but it's worth talking about right now. I think that's where the true shadow inventory is, but I think it's a positive for the real estate market, not something for homeowners who are worried about their property values to be scared of.
Oh yeah, true.
And not for if there's buyers out there that are thinking, I'm just waiting for the clasps and I'm going to jump in there.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's going to work out the way that they want to. And here's why. After the recession, there were a lot of people, there were people that short sold, or there were people that walked away from their properties. But a lot of people rode out the storm. They were fortunate that they didn't have an employment disruption or didn't have to relocate. And yeah, they were bummed for a lot of years because their home was worth less than they paid for it. But they rode that out. And as we got into 16, 17, 18, they were able to, a lot of people who had been sitting tight in a home that was too small or a home that was too big, and they just wrote it out, but they really wanted to either upsize or downsize or move to a different part of town.
Right.
And then as prices went up, that opportunity was afforded to them. And that was really healthy for the market because they were selling. And then at the same time, we had job creation in Reno and the Tesla effect. And so there were buyers that were buying. And so great years for lenders, great years for real estate, and great years for the consumers as well. And interest rates were healthy and prices were healthy. I feel like, and tell me if what you think, and tell me if I'm wrong or if you agree. But when we do have interest rates pull back, even I feel like if they pull into the 5s or the low 6s, we have a built-in glut of those homeowners who love their rate, they love their monthly payment, but they don't love their house.
Yeah.
And they're just waiting for interest rates to be in a spot where they can upsize or downsize. I mean, I have a lot of clients who have kind of been sitting in their home and, we have these conversations, they want to sell, but then they look at what their monthly payment would be for their replacement property, whether they're downsizing or upsizing. And they like, it doesn't pencil for us. It doesn't make sense. But when the time comes, or when they're finally at their wit's end, they're going to sell.
Well, Sandy, say what you think about this, because this leads directly into what I wanted to talk about next.
No, I think you're exactly right. I mean, and we've done a few move up, move down, but it's not very many. It's a small percentage of the people. And I think as home prices continue to do what they do and slowly move up, that also, like you were saying, affords more options because you have more equity. If somebody has debt, then they now can pay that off or pay their realtor. And so I think as rates come down, but then also as equity and home prices increase, it will unlock more opportunities for people. So if people are sitting tight right now, you got to do what you got to do for now. And then we'll just be planning and waiting for that opportunity to come up.
Because it is such a personal move. You have to do it when the time is right for you. But sometimes market conditions can influence when the time is right for you. Mm-hmm. I have clients right now who they had recently just done the coolest stuff in their backyard, made it so perfect for their family. And then of course, right when you make your house perfect is when you find a new house that's better. So they're selling their house, doing a move up to a beautiful new house, using all their proceeds. They've gotten their home is built so much in equity that they're going to deal with capital gains tax even though they're a married couple. So that means they have more than $500,000 in proceeds. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And they're paying off all the debt that they have, plus moving up to a new house in a time when right now we'd say conditions aren't optimal. So it is very much more specific to the family, which is I think what you were saying. I'm going to jump forward and then Ken, I want to come back so you can put a bow on the shadow inventory thing. But what I was going to talk about, I'm jumping way forward now. But I just like to do these things. Keep everyone on their toes. Yeah. Okay, so wealth effect. You were talking about how people will choose, the right time to buy, and consumer debt might be trapping them. But I think a big thing to watch, equally big as shadow inventory in 2025, is how people will behave, because the stock market doesn't equate to the economy, but people do behave differently when their portfolios are doing well, and they spend differently. And so I think we're going to see, because people feel like their portfolios are going to do better in 2025, that they're going to spend more money. And I think it's going to influence the real estate market, or they'll be more willing to abandon the beautiful interest rate that they have on the house to live the life they want because they're feeling wealthier. So we saw a rebound in equities in 2023. And as a result, there was an increase in $288 billion in consumer spending in 2023, which is not a year that we were saying that people were feeling great financially, right? They were feeling like, overall, I mean, the consensus has been that people have felt poor in recent years because of sticky inflation.
Yeah.
But it's a catch-22, because when people spend more because their stock market's doing well, that makes inflation stickier. So then we're in this like cycle of, well, okay, are we going to buy a home or not? Is my portfolio doing good or is it not? And then interest rates are higher because of the way I'm spending and behaving based on what my portfolio is doing. But a new thing we can watch now in 2025 is how their crypto is doing. Because if people's crypto is doing well, they may also, the crypto gains could result in more real estate sales in the next 12 months. Yeah. Because if that's contributing to a wealth effect where they're feeling better and they're willing to make more moves. The thing that I saw was interesting was 18 to 29-year-olds. They only have an 8% home ownership rate. The age of first-time home buyers is moving up. I think it's now 36, 37.
Yeah.
Of a first-time home buyer. So we're not seeing a lot of 18 to 29-year-olds buy homes, but 18 to 29-year-olds own the most crypto. So I'm interested to watch that demographic and what they do with their wealth next year.
That'll be very interesting. Yeah, 1 in 6 adults have crypto. I thought that was high. But
makes me feel bad.
Well, anecdotally, that's what I'm seeing on the market, because especially cash buyers have been a lot more optimistic the last quarter. Earlier in the year, we were kind of in a swoon, and you know, some of my 7-figure listings were sitting a little bit longer, but I definitely felt a shift this last quarter.
Were there those people
as far as buyer activity?
Specifically in your 7-figure list?
Absolutely, yeah.
See, that's interesting, right? Because the top 1% holds 30% of the wealth. I don't know that those are the people buying the 7-figure listings. It's probably the top 10%, but they own 2/3 of the total net household wealth in our country. And that's after subtracting out their debt. So, you know, if we net it out, the top 10% in our country own 2/3 of the wealth, and a huge portion of that has been fueled by home prices. So it's move up buyers, I think, who are buying your listings. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And, but they feel a lot more comfortable tapping into their equities because, I mean, they've done well this year. I mean, that's what they've told me directly. So,
did I go back to the right spot?
Yeah, so we were talking about, what were we talking about?
This is the ploy we do to our guests. I can get all
Put
over
a blindfold
the
on,
place.
spin them around.
We'll move to the next slide. Yeah, move to the next slide. So we know there's few withhelds. So this is foreclosures. There's still, even though we talked about, I know there are people that are feeling the pinch, and they're feeling their mortgage payments are becoming a bigger part of their pie. Their credit card payments are becoming a bigger part of their pie, and even home equity and car. It's expensive to live right now.
Yeah.
But that hasn't translated yet into defaults. We have, I'll skip the slide, but like short sales and Rios, they're negligible. There's like 6 this year. 6 on the MLS.
Negligible.
And those are extraordinary situations. Usually the house is in really terrible condition. I will say I see there's a lot of off-market activity with flippers.
Okay.
I mean, they're finding off-market deals. You know, the guys that are out there doing the advertising and letter writing campaign, buy ugly houses. But it's a small part of the market, but they're active. But if you look at, I went through the Washoe County Recorder's Office, which we're lucky in Washoe County. We have a great assessor. They have great data. The Recorder's Office has great online data. There's a lot of information you can pull from that. But you look at the foreclosures, I think there was like, there'll be a little under 300 notices of default filed this year. That's negligible.
Yeah, considering how many homes there are.
So
Well, a lot of those become current, right? I mean, they don't, notice of default doesn't necessarily mean that you're
Gonna get foreclosed on.
yeah, that's just like the 120-day warning shot. Like you need to get
and
your
a lot
house
of
in order.
People pull it together.
And a lot of times they'll negotiate for years. But the fact that we're not seeing hardly any notices of default yet, that's encouraging. People are able to stay on top of their payment and are working things through. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And the last thing is new construction. And I can't remember who you had on a couple weeks ago from BRG.
Brian Geit.
Yeah, and he's exactly right. The builders are being a lot more measured in the number of lots that they're releasing. So if you look at the new construction in town,
I didn't know you listened to all our podcasts, Ken. My heart is so warmed right now.
there's good content on here.
Aww.
But
You've been talking.
all right, this is my plug for the Property Pursuits podcast. You should listen every month and become a regular.
Thank you.
All right.
That's why we had you on. It was just to say that part.
All right. This has been brought to you by Ken Lund. This segment. And Property Pursuits.
We might have to come back to it because there's so much stuff we didn't say.
Well, I don't want to step on what you all are talking about, but the long and the short of the new construction.
We're talking about you.
The long and the short on the new construction is to date. As I was, I'm looking for, where did I put the numbers? Oh, here it is, right here. So last year there were 1,332 new construction starts in 2023. That I pulled that. If you've seen that great Brian Bonifant slide, and I didn't want to put it on here and take his intellectual property, but he uses all the economic forecasts, and it shows that graph that shows the number of single-family homes constructed per year and the number of multifamily units constructed per year. And it's incredible to see when you compare it to prior to the recession, how many single family units. I mean, something like 5,000 single family units, I think, were built in 2005. In fact, I have the numbers right here. Yeah, 5,390 single family units in 2005. Last year, 1,332. And I'm interested to see what the final number for permits is this year. But I can tell you that to date, and this is information I pulled from the assessor and
Yeah, it's fast.
ran the numbers. It looks like to date, as of a couple days ago, 1,085 new construction homes had sold year to date. But when you look at the lots, it's not like they have a ton of homes released in the,
This is why we have a housing shortage.
we have a massive housing shortage. Yeah. And, the inventory that they have isn't going to overcome that. It's not like we have a glut of new construction projects. The projects that they have, some of them, they can sell homes for 3 to 4 years, and they're just, do 10 homes at a time. They're being very measured in their building. They definitely learned their lesson from, learn the lessons from the recession that we all learned.
But it's such a two-sided story though, because we're glad they learned their lessons, and we're glad that there's not any risk to home values, and this is why we know the numbers don't lie. But at the same time, it's really making home ownership hard to break into for the first-time buyer, because there's just such a severe shortage of homes.
Well, pick your poison. We don't,
Which poison would you pick?
This affordability question. Pick a great city that you love to visit in the country other than Reno. Like a great place that you love to visit.
Portland.
Portland's an interesting one.
Portland's had a tough time lately.
Okay.
Same with San Francisco, but I just went to New York City. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, what are New York City's property values?
Insane.
Yeah. I mean, think about Kalispell, Jackson Hole,
All
Park
these
City.
thriving local economies.
I mean, where
Cruise.
the places that people like to visit, they're expensive, and that's the hard thing is, nobody aspires to move to Hemet, California, and Reno right now. Reno's a great place to come and live. People move here because of the proximity of the mountains and the open space. And you don't want to kill the golden goose that that makes this a great place to live by, building over with multifamily. But on the flip side, on the flip side, a lot of those neighborhoods, if you grow up in that town, you can't go back there to live because you can't afford a house.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's, I think the policy, if you look at other places in the country that are kind of in our boat, the home affordability and having the prices drop so that everybody has a place to live. I think the answer is more in ADUs and infill and density than it is going to be that we're going to be able to just flood the houses with new single family homes so that everybody has a place to live.
We've talked a lot about density on this show, and people, specifically Reno's problem with density. It's just, I think it's a tough pill to swallow, but you're bringing up an excellent point in that the markets that you see as the most thriving have higher home prices. And I get what you're saying with the pick your poison. I think also this whole rhetoric that it's impossible for a first-time home buyer to break in isn't true. It's just that a first-time home buyer is maybe not going to live in the neighborhood they want to for the first 2 years. They're maybe not going to get the home that checks every box. But Sandy and I see it every day where the first-time home buyer just gets into something to get in, and then 2 years later we're sitting with them at their closing table where they're like have tears of joy because they're buying the house they really, really want for their family, and they're really excited, and it's only possible because they broke into the market. So I agree, basically, long story short.
Yeah, so long story short, there's not a lot of supply historically speaking. If you run through the numbers, we still have a supply crisis.
But to put a bow on shadow inventory, what impact do you see it having next year?
I don't. That's the thing. I don't think that there is this hidden shadow inventory out there. To the extent, what would trigger a lot of homes to come on the market would be an interest rate shift. But almost every single one of those sellers would be turning around to purchase a replacement property. So it's not going to affect the balance of buyers to sellers. We're not going to have a flood of sellers without buyers, because
excellent point.
And so I think that would be a really positive thing. Our volume has been so low, just the number of units sold. If you go to that slide,
Slide?
that's go back, keep going.
Well, and that's the thing is if you look at our immigration, like people are moving here and not like people are leaving, but the ratio is just so offset to people are much more moving here than locals are moving away. So that's just exacerbating the problem.
And it's interesting. I mean, to affordability, I mean, Brian Bonifant is one of the people I really look up to. But our population growth in Washoe County has slowed significantly. The job creation is continuing, but Washoe County's growth, we're not having as many people move in net as we used to. And a lot of that's because people are choosing Fernley, Dayton, less expensive alternatives. Or, so affordability does affect, our ability to attract jobs. And it's crazy. Look at how much Washoe County has grown. We slid past that graph, but I mean, we've grown 80,000 people in the last 15 years, and we're building less single family homes per year than, when the population was 80,000 less. Yeah. So on this graph that's up on the screen right now, and you know what? Live TV. Why did I even put this up? Oh, yeah, it was to show that, I mean, relatively speaking, I mean, there's less listing. Sales are definitely down significantly.
Right.
There's less homes being sold per year than there has been during a lot of history. But supply is also historically down as well.
Yeah, and it's totally correlated.
So the nice thing is it's balancing each other out. So we're not having a collapse in prices, and we're not having, a massive run up on prices.
Which is a positive people don't talk about very much. That we have some stability in prices at the moment. Okay, Sandy, your turn.
I guess. What's next?
No?
No. Get ready for more charts and graphs. Oh, but first, our success story. So we had, yesterday I closed on a loan for a first-time home buyer who was renting. Her landlord sold her the home. So this is another thing that you can tap into. Like if you have a family friend or a landlord or somebody where you could maybe get a deal. So our client got the home. I think it appraised low, but it came in at contract price. So she got a deal there. And then her landlord gave her $24,900 towards a seller temporary 3-2-1 buy down. So in year 1, her payment is $735 less. In year 2, $504 less, and in year 3, $258 less. So
Sweet.
It's huge. She got into the home, just closed yesterday. You know, she was already living there, so she doesn't even have to move, which is another perk. So yeah, if you have a landlord, broach the subject. Maybe they would be willing to cut you a deal.
I think it's worthwhile because it's not just about the down payment. Sorry, Ken. Because you don't have to pay for moving expenses. Moving costs money, you know, buying all the boxes, hiring movers. Forget the money. It's mentally stressful. People don't want to be stressed right now. If you're renting, I'd highly encourage that you reach out to us to see if we can qualify you to buy the house you're renting. And then you could reach out to your landlord with real numbers, a real deal.
Yeah.
Sandy and I have a mutual friend, and, you know, a number of years back, he purchased directly from his landlord. And, you know, that's how he created his equity. And then he was able to move out, and it was like a step-up property. And then he was able to move out to his, you know, preferred property with a lot of land about 4 years later.
Yeah,
So
it's huge. Getting into the market affords you opportunities later.
I did have a question for you ladies, though. It's something that I've been wondering about. So here we are, we're rolling into
Is Sandy
2025.
single? Is that what you're going to ask?
Totally different.
Yeah, what?
But if you wanna unpack that, let's talk about that.
Sandy, do I want to unpack it?
Not right now.
Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, by the way, I don't have my wedding ring on right now since we're on that subject because I have a tendency to tap it on the table. But all of you watching know I'm happily married.
You so much because of the noise. That stuff drives her insane when she's editing the podcast.
I know. So I took it off so I'm not being a noisy pants. But
His wife is a babe.
she is.
I met her a long time ago when I was doing bar, and we took bar classes together at the Daily Method. And then sometimes you'd volunteer to do the kids center so that other moms could work out. But my kid wouldn't go to anyone but your wife. Aww. I'd get pulled out of class. I could not do my workout unless your wife was in there.
She has a nice aura about her. And you know, one of the things I love about the future is female. Here's another shameless plug.
Yeah, let's go.
All of the good real estate decisions we've made in my life have been my wife. She's always the one that says, you know what, we need to buy this. We need to buy this. We're going to rent this out, and we're going to flip this over and buy it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
So anyway, how do we get on this subject?
You were going to ask us a question that you said you've been thinking about.
Yeah, so these 3-2-1 and 2-1 buy downs. Yes. So we're rolling into 2025. Mm-hmm. Have you seen people who did their buy downs in 2022 when we were first in the teeth of the interest rate hikes come back and feel stressed because those interest rate reductions haven't materialized like they have? Do you feel like your clients are pretty comfortable right now, even though that 3-2-1 is expired?
For the most part, I think everyone has been fine. There are a few people that are like, hey, just checking in, like, what's our refi report? So we're, constantly monitoring them. We have them in an auto system to let them know when it's time, and we'll always run the numbers for them in the meantime. So the nice part about it is I feel comfortable with it because they are still qualified at the highest interest rate possible. So according to mortgage guideline standards, they can qualify with their year 2 or 3 payment. But yes, some people were hoping to not get into that year 2 or 3 payment, so that, interest rates can be a little unpredictable, which I will talk about next. But for the most part, I think people have been okay.
My problem was I got a bunch of people's hopes up that were in their buy downs in October when we were able. There was one day that 5.125% was available, and so I jumped on it and I got it to a bunch of my clients, and then literally by the time they could answer by Monday, the market had blown up because that was 2 weeks before the election and interest rates spiked. Those are the only ones I have that are a little antsy right now to get out of their buy down, are the ones who saw that they could have just locked into 5.125 and been done with it for the next 30 years or however long they're going to be in the house. Other than that, I think Sandy's point is correct in that when we put people into the 3-2-1 buy down, one part of it was that will refinance during the temporary time. But the other part of it was it'll give you a chance to get used to the mortgage payments. It'll give you may have your income trajectory may improve over the next 3 years. So there was other benefits that people still are taking advantage of, even if they're not getting to refinance as soon as they thought.
Yeah.
Or like our clients who won't have daycare expenses in 2 years. So I think that's another huge reason it makes sense to.
God, what will that be like?
Okay. So, here's where you can find us online. So we do this podcast once a month, but we also spend a lot of time putting out educational content all the time. So follow us on Instagram. Ken and Alicia's handle is up there too, so follow them and check out. There's lots more graphs on his Instagram, so it's always a good time.
Yeah.
These two.
If you come and visit it, I'll be motivated to use it more.
There you go. Okay, so we wanted to talk about like a recap of what happened last year in terms of interest rates. It's towards the end of the year. We're starting to feel a little nostalgic about how great it was.
Are we?
I don't know. So this is the last 2 years. You can see it's been a little...
You can totally have it, because...
Oh, excellent. I like that. So this is the last 2 years. So quick recap, 2020, 2021, rates were historically low. The Fed had the Fed funds rate at essentially zero, and so mortgage rates were the lowest they'd ever been since the history of tracking them. And then in 2022, we saw about a 4% increase in 10 months, which was pretty drastic. And it was cool, though, because the housing market...
Sorry, it's just my trauma from that time ago, and then to hear you say it was cool, though. I'm like,
The summer of 22 was where a lot of this gray hair came from.
Yeah, that was. But my biggest takeaway, though, was how resilient the housing market was. We thought that it would come to a grinding halt if rates jumped up like that. And yes, activity totally slowed, but
home prices
stayed
didn't drop.
Pretty steady. We saw a small dip, and then they recovered. So that's just the thing is, real estate long term is pretty stable. So anyway, then the Fed, who had gotten themselves in a pickle with inflation, started their rate hiking cycles, which was a good time. So we wanted to we've been hearing a lot about inflation, and it feels like everything's very unaffordable right now. And that's fair. Things have gotten way more expensive, but we have to also, I think, keep that in perspective. We, relative to other countries in the world, have a pretty low inflation rate, especially because of this Fed fund. What they did was pretty effective at quelling inflation. So you can see here the Fed funds rate. Just as a quick reminder, this is not the same as mortgage rates. This is the overnight lending rate that banks use to lend other banks money, and also more closely ties to credit cards, car loans, HELOCs. So if the Fed funds rate looked like this, why did mortgage rates look like this? So this is the last year. And just to recap, I pulled out a couple different things so you can kind of take a look at things that were market moving.
Major moments.
Yeah. So just a couple. So this chart is kind of backwards. So when you see it going up, that actually means rates are getting better and coming down. So it's the inverse. But so in January, we got this first circle, we got comments from the Fed that PCE, or personal consumption expenditure, an inflation measure, was almost sustainably at 2%, but that they weren't going to cut rapidly. So then we saw rates get worse. And later in January, the European Central Bank president said she thought they would be cutting rates soon. Bond market liked that. We saw rates get better. So her comments were that slower growth is happening, inflation is moderating. January 31st, this third bubble. That's where the Fed said that they thought we reached the peak rate in terms of hiking, and that economic activity was strong. They were not confident that inflation was sticking. So then you see rates get worse. So a lot of this really is just reacting to what is the Fed doing with their monetary policy, and what can we take away from that thought process on what is likely to happen with inflation, right? Because investors who are investing money in bonds are constantly considering what they can get in terms of return elsewhere. Just real quick. So in April, things got a lot worse. They said they wanted to be really slow with rate cuts. The other theme of this year is that we've been getting conflicting employment data. So the jobs numbers will come out and show a ton of job gains, and then the next month they'll revise it downward. So that also has been like an impact on rates. So April had rates around 7.2%. July, so that's number 6 here. We started to get better inflation. That was great. And then on September 18th, we saw our first Fed rate cut. So that was number 7 here. So we were super stoked about that. And we were like, great, rates are going to get better. And then they didn't, which is another reminder, not the same. What were you going to say?
It's just that we're only halfway through the year, and I'm not sure if this exercise was really good for me.
But anyway, so I'm almost done.
Not because of that. It's
Just reliving.
It's been a rough year.
But anyway, so then right around October, let's see.
It's like watching one of those YouTube videos on a roller coaster.
Yes, that's what I feel like is happening to my intestines right now.
So around mid-October, we started thinking Trump was going to win, and the bond market did not like that. Not for any political reasons, but for his economic policies are considered potentially more inflationary. So anyway, but then November, Trump appointed Scott Bessent as as the Treasury Secretary, and he's considered to be a pretty reasonable guy. And
He did that about 2 minutes after I sent my email giving all the background on the other guy.
Yeah.
And then we saw rates start to get better. So the moral of the story here is that's what happened in 2024. Big things that impact mortgage rates are going to be the Fed policy, what their comments are, what they expect inflation to look like, also their quantitative tightening or quantitative easing, which is how much are they investing in mortgage
their balance
bonds as
sheet.
well. Yep. Inflation, jobs, geopolitical things. So, right, we saw COVID cause a big change in rates. And then bond supply and demand, if investors can earn well investing in mortgages or in other things. So moral of the story is here, we are constantly monitoring this data, and it could impact our short-term locking strategy. But overall, if you zoom out, it's really hard to say what rates are going to do. And you shouldn't try and time the market like that. So personal finance, personal decision, and we'll be helping you with when does it make sense to do your move up, and what strategies can we make work. So yeah,
I think it's harder to predict rates than ever going into the administration. Not to get political, but it's just so unpredictable. Besson gets out and says, well, the trade, the tariffs are more of a negotiating tool. And then, the president-elect gets on and says, oh, for day one, we're doing it. And,
because if you tell them it's a negotiating tool, you take away the power of the negotiating tool.
Was there an impact on rates with that?
Yes. So that day was a great day that Sandy pointed out for us. We were pretty pleased over here. Got to lock in some buyers better than we thought they were going to get locked on. And so they got better monthly payments. But then Trump pretty quickly gets on and is like, whoa, no, we're doing it. We're doing the thing. And then rates went right back up. It's so volatile, which is...
Is that buy the rumor, sell the news?
Oh, yeah. How does that go?
Yeah, buy the rumor, sell the news. So that's why if you, the jobs reports will come out and we think it's going to be like this. And so then the bond market will move and then something else happens. Exactly, like the election was a perfect example. So they started thinking, Trump's going to win. Rates did all these things. And then Trump won. And it was like, meh, weirdy.
They already built it in.
Yeah.
Rates went up like never mind.
Which that's basically this morning, right? It came out at 2.7 inflation.
Yeah.
But everybody expected it, so they expect a quarter point cut, and then. So
we didn't have a bloodbath in bonds this morning, even though inflation numbers weren't great.
Yeah.
You were just mentioning it's really hard to forecast interest rates, so that's what I'm gonna do. But not right now.
Still waiting for that 5%. You promised.
So on the last slide, man, you really do listen to all of it, don't you? So you guys, we're going to, on December 18th, launch this new online space where I'm hoping there will be a lot of graphs from Sandy and Ken and discussions on what's happening with the economy, how it translates to real estate, about how the future really is female, all the things in one centralized place. You can get a head start on access to this by scanning this QR code, which you'll want to do because I'm going to do a 2025 forecast, both virtually and in person, at Smarter Hour next week. So it'll be a fun little holiday gathering for all our realtors here in Reno where we can have drinks and some apps and celebrate the end of this year, whether it was a good one or a rough one for you. But it's not going to be your average happy hour. It's going to be a Smarter Hour because I do not learn from my mistakes, Ken, and I'm going to try to predict interest rates again. Thanks for being here today, you guys. It was really fun. And we'll continue seeing you next year for Property Pursuits, but it will be on a new platform. So get in that circle. Talk to you soon.